This message comes from Mint Mobile. Starting at $15 a month, make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. $45 upfront payment for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. First 3 months only. See terms.
This is America in Pursuit, a limited-run series from Throughline and NPR. I'm Ramtin Arablouei. Each week, we bring you stories about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the U.S. that began 250 years ago this year. Today, we're going back to one of the most significant moments in U.S. history, the Civil War, one of the bloodiest wars fought on American soil. At the heart of the war was the question of slavery and whether to abolish it. The Confederate South broke off from the Union because it wanted to keep slavery and the freedom to govern themselves. The Union in the North, led by President Abraham Lincoln, wanted to make slavery illegal and keep the United States together. A little less than 2 years into the bloody conflict, on January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln made a bold proclamation.
All persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward and forever free.
The Emancipation Proclamation was a major flex in federal power. Lincoln spells out new terms of peace. The fighting would only end when slavery ended. This was a risky move because the Union was gearing up for a presidential election, and not everyone in the Union agreed with Lincoln's hardline views on abolition and how to fight the war.
He's aware that by insisting on making emancipation a condition of peace negotiations with the Confederacy, he's giving political ammunition to the Democrats. The Democrats, the opposition, are saying, you're deliberately protracting the war to secure abolition. You could get peace if only you were prepared to think about reuniting the country on the Constitution as it once was, not on what you want it to be.
So there was a lot at stake here.
The election of 1864 is, in my view, the most significant election in American history, the most significant for democracy in American history.
The election would take place in the middle of the war. It would test the young republic's ability to hold an election in times of duress and shape the outcome of the war. Today on the show, Rund and I bring you the story of how the 1864 election changed how we vote and who we are as a country. That's coming up after a quick break.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. This holiday season, stop overpaying for wireless and switch to Mint. Shop 50% off unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/switch. Limited time offer. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Above 35 gigabytes, network may slow when busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. This message comes from LinkedIn ads. One of the hardest parts about B2B marketing is reaching the right audience. That's why you need LinkedIn ads. You can target your buyers by job title, company, role, seniority, and skills. All the professionals you need to reach in one place. Get a $250 credit on your next campaign so you can try it yourself. Just go to linkedin.com/NPRpod. That's linkedin.com/NPRpod. Terms and conditions apply. Only on LinkedIn ads.
The war begins. Secession is met by Lincoln's determination to hold the Union together, to resolve the question of whether, as he put it, a constitutional republic, a democracy, a government of the people, can or cannot maintain its integrity against its own internal foes. I'm Richard Carwadine. I taught for a number of years in Oxford University. I'm the Rhodes Professor Emeritus of American History.
After issuing the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln briefly considers walking it back.
He thinks of abandoning emancipation as a basis for peace. But he decides it would be an ignominious surrender. He can't possibly yield on that. He said, and I quote, "It would be worse than losing the presidential contest."
Lincoln doubles down on his ideals as he gears up for the 1864 presidential election, an election where
there are deep ideological and cultural divides. On the one side, you've got the Democratic opposition considering Lincoln and the administration and the federal army to be a tyrannical force, willing to crush individual freedom in a pursuit of reunion and an unnatural emancipationist racial order. On the other hand, you've got Lincoln and the National Union Party pledging themselves to seeing the war right through to its conclusion. They're offering a vision of a reunified nation no longer stained by slavery. The country would be, I suppose, true to the egalitarian principles of the Declaration of Independence. It would emerge from the war with a richer democracy.
initially, things looked good for Lincoln and his party, the Republicans. They were winning on the battlefield, and the days of the Confederacy seemed numbered. They seemed to have the election in the bag. But as winter turned to spring, the Confederates began to push back hard, and the Federal Army faced some big losses.
Things are looking so bleak, in fact. Lincoln's party chairman comes to Lincoln and he says, you're going to lose Illinois, you're going to lose Indiana, you're going to lose Pennsylvania. These are key states, and if you lose those three states, then inevitably you're going to lose the election overall. Confederates, looking at this, were quite sure that the weariness of the war in the North would lead to the election of a new president who would be willing to sue for peace.
And they hoped that the new president would be Democratic nominee General George B. McClellan,
who was, of course, a very well-loved professional soldier.
McClellan had served under Lincoln, but as a candidate, his main position was that the war needed to end ASAP, and the Confederate states needed to be reunited with the Union. Emancipation be damned. In other words,
there would be a dishonorable peace that would not see the end of slavery.
Meanwhile, heated political debates were happening in town squares on the home front and among soldiers on the war front. For many soldiers, abolition was the key issue in this election, whether they were for it or against it.
Most soldiers in the Union or Federal Army leaned Republican, which, remember, was Lincoln's anti-slavery party. And that was partly a reflection of where these soldiers came from. Many were from places where having a voice wasn't a given, and they came to the U.S. hoping that right was guaranteed.
When you look at the makeup of the federal armies, you'll see that there are significant numbers of immigrant troops, of troops that have been recruited indeed from Europe, certainly Irish and German troops who understand that they have come to a country that offers something different. And if you allow the Confederacy to succeed, you are ending what Lincoln called the last best hope of Earth, but it's what they understand to be the last best hope of Earth, too.
The last best hope of Earth. That promise of freedom, of representation for all, which might chart a new path for the world.
It's also important to note that nearly 10% of the Federal Army were black soldiers.
I can quote you a letter from a black soldier serving in the 5th Massachusetts Cavalry. He describes McClellan and the Democrats, and I quote, as ever the chief instruments in giving aid and assistance
to the common enemy of the country, inaugurators of this bloody conflict on the rightful domains of freedom. Is this the people's candidate? McClellan, the secret advocate of dissension, disloyalty, treason, and the ardent lover of human slavery?
But here's the thing. Regardless of where soldiers fell politically, most of them shared one important thing in common. They couldn't vote.
There's only one state in 1861, when the war starts, that has actually granted soldiers the right of voting in the field, of absentee voting. When you've got 1 million men in arms in the Union Army by the high point of the war, this is a huge proportion of the voting public that you're disfranchising unless you make special arrangements for them.
As the war went on, pressure was building to give soldiers the right to vote.
Those pressures come overwhelmingly from the Republicans.
Why them?
Lincoln and the Republicans become aware of just what kind of loyalty they have within the federal forces.
Which meant if they gave soldiers the vote, it would likely help them win the election. So Lincoln tried to make some special arrangements.
He wrote to his generals saying it would please me if you would allow the soldiers to return for the fall elections.
But the reality was most soldiers weren't going to be able to get furloughs to go home and vote. After all, it was the middle of a war, and there was only so much the federal government could do.
So, as always, it fell to the states to decide if and how those soldiers would vote.
I mean, what had to happen was, of course, legal change, statutory change.
States began passing laws to give soldiers the vote. Some instituted absentee voting, which is still around today.
You allow the soldiers in the camps to submit a ballot into ballot boxes that were taken to the camps by state election commissioners. And then on polling day, the soldiers deposit their tickets under the supervision of the commanding officer and the commissioners.
Other states instituted something called proxy voting,
where you allow someone that you designate to cast your vote for you in your home precinct.
But it's easy to see how that might not go according to plan. An imposter could pretend to be the proxy. A commanding officer might intimidate soldiers into voting for a certain person or keep them from mailing their ballots. And the envelope marked soldier's vote
could easily be opened and a different ballot be submitted inside.
Thing is, even in states where soldiers could vote, questions hung over these new ways of voting and raised concerns about the legitimacy of the election.
Both sides claim malpractice and fraud. You have Democrats claiming that the War Department is delaying the delivery of soldiers' votes back home, that where they're known to be McClellan votes, they are being held up by the War Department. Even claims that the ballots are being extensively altered by removing McClellan's votes from the envelopes and substituting Lincoln ballots, weighting the scales very powerfully in favor of the Republicans and the administration.
The men who would vote the McClellan ticket were kept here, and only A's men were sent to their states to vote. All of the McClellan men were kept here. I suppose I might have gotten home if I would have said I would vote for A, but never. I would sooner stay here for another year than to come home and vote for him.
But the Republicans, too, could point legitimately to the arrest of several Democrats in Washington and Baltimore for forging McClellan ballots designed to swing the vote in New York State. So both parties are at it, but it's the Republicans who are able to present themselves most powerfully and most convincingly to the Army that they are the friends of the democratic rights of the soldiers.
I cast the first vote I have ever cast for the election of Lincoln. In doing so, I felt that I was doing my country as much service as I have ever done on the field of battle.
November 8th, 1864. Election Day.
The day itself passed off peacefully enough, but there is this strong sense of tension, a sense of high excitement, determination to be heard on the day, to stand up for your rights as voters, regardless of what your commanding officers might want, or regardless of what the other party's campaigners might want.
The votes were counted. Among the soldiers, Lincoln got 3 votes for every 1 McClellan got. Before long, it was clear that Lincoln had won the election.
Yes, there's fraud. Yes, there's manipulation. Yes, there's partisanship. There's malpractice. But I think ultimately There was enough of authenticity and good practice in the absentee balloting in the war for the result itself not to have been a distortion.
A few days later, Lincoln addressed the nation.
The present rebellion brought our republic to a severe test, and a presidential election occurring in regular course during the rebellion added not a little to the strain.
I mean, he knew that the electoral process in wartime had its shortcomings, but what it showed was just how deeply embedded the idea of representative government had become in the United States over the years since the Revolution.
The election, along with its incidental and undesirable strife, has done good, too. It has demonstrated that a people's government can sustain a national election in the midst of a great civil war. Until now, it has not been known to the world that this was a possibility.
Amidst the bloody war, with all the messiness and drama that came with the election, democracy managed to preserve its most fundamental pillar, voting. Thousands of soldiers had voted for the first time. The 1864 election laid the groundwork for expanding voting rights. That's it for this week's episode of America in Pursuit. If you want to hear the full-length Throughline episode, check out How We Vote. And be sure to join us next Tuesday when we talk about what came after the Civil War and emancipation.
What is going to happen to, nearly 4 million African Americans who had been enslaved in the South? Are they going to have basic rights? Are they not going to have basic rights?
We'll bring you the story of the 14th Amendment and the debate over who is an American and what rights come with that. That's next time. This episode was produced by Kiana Moradam and edited by Christina Kim, with help from the Throughline production team. Music, as always, by me, Ramtin Arablouei, and my band Drop Electric. Special thanks to Julie Kane, Irene Noguchi, Beth Donovan, Casey Miner, and Lindsay McKenna. We're your hosts, Ramtin Arablouei
and Rand Abdel Fattah. Thank you for listening.
This message comes from MIDI Health. CEO Joanna Strober shares the personal experience that led her to start a virtual care platform for women in perimenopause and menopause.
I was having anxiety, I had gained weight, I wasn't sleeping, and my primary care doctor never once said that perhaps I was in perimenopause and that all these things could be related to my hormones. So I had a really tough time for quite a while, and a friend recommended that I try a concierge doctor. She prescribed hormones for me, a combination of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And I felt very relieved that I had this care, and I also had a lot of sadness that I had spent such a long period of time going through this and not getting the right care. And so essentially what we really want to do at MIDI is democratize access to this type of care.
MIDI Health, committed to helping women in midlife with perimenopause and menopause care, accessible via telehealth visits at joinmidi.com. This message comes from Instacart. Everyone prefers things a certain way, like groceries. If you want groceries just how you like them, you gotta try Instacart. They have a new preference picker that lets you pick how ripe or unripe you want your bananas. Shoppers can see your preferences up front, helping guide their choices. Because when it comes to groceries, the details matter. Instacart. Get groceries just how you like.